to you by Sparks Hockey, Dairy Queen, Monkey Sports, Safety Insurance, NEHDAA, and Sports Etc. Now, Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beers.
Hey, good morning. It is the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. I am your host, Ty Anderson. Bob Beers and Ryan Johnston will be joining us via the phone line today. So you got me, got Ryan Garvin behind the glass producing, taking you up until 11 a.m. today as the Boston Bruins play their biggest game of the season. We're going to be saying that every Saturday from here until game 82. Every game is their biggest game of the season at this point. And Ryan, I've had an epiphany of sorts with this team.
Tell me all about it.
They have to get in. They have to get in. They have been inside the picture long enough. I think we all have to acknowledge what an absolute rock fight this playoff race has been. I think six of the top 10 teams in the NHL since the Christmas break are in the Eastern Conference. You have Buffalo. Buffalo's currently on the best 40-game segment by any team since the 95-96 Red Wings. Pretty good team. You have Montreal, 84 points. You have Boston at 84 points. You have Detroit at 84 points. You have Columbus at 83 points. You have the Islanders at 83 points. Basically, you have four spots for five teams right now. Basically, you want to throw Pittsburgh in there? They have 84 points too. Throw them in there. So you have five. One of these teams not going to make it. Is my point. The Boston Bruins have to make it. They have to make it. And I would say that this is a successful season. They are better than we thought they would be. A lot of us thought they would be on the outside looking in, maybe make it interesting, but ultimately fall out of the race. Hasn't happened yet, and it's almost April. You know, it's March 21st as we do the show today. They got to get in. Falling out of it, I think, in my opinion, would be the only way for this successful season to become unsuccessful. And I know that might sound a bit of hyperbole in there. Sure, perhaps. You've been in the structure now for a long enough period where I go, don't fall out of it. Don't fall out of it. And I think that's where they are right now. Like we were kind of talking, I think, beginning of the year when they were struggling, we were saying, do they have the horses? Do they have enough in the tank for their top dogs to not wear down? Well, what I would argue now is that some of their top dogs, Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geekie, have been cold for 12 games now. So they shouldn't be out of gas. If anything, they're in the pit stop right now. They're getting refueled. They haven't been doing anything for basically 3 months, or 3 weeks rather. Got to stay in the playoff picture. Got to make it. It's almost like the Patriots, right? Like we were kind of celebrating the Patriots all year long. And we were saying, wow, what a great story this is. This is amazing. They're 11-3. They're 14-3. Wow, this is great. And then it hit the point where we go, don't lose to the Chargers. Don't lose in the wild card round. And that's where the Bruins are right now.
Oh, my God, they lost Bo Nix. You can't lose to the Broncos.
Right. And here's what, and I know, like Columbus won't lose. Columbus refuses to lose, right? Detroit, who the Bruins are going to play tonight, are on a great run right now. John Gibson is father time. He's turning back the clock right now for the Red Wings. But you look at where this Bruins team is, and you look at the schedule. All these teams have a similarly difficult schedule between now and Game 82. The Boston Bruins are going to get a lift here with James Higgins, who we're going to talk about more as the show goes on. The Bruins have to remain in the playoff picture. They have to qualify for the playoffs. And the other part of it, the other reason why I feel that way is that I think the East is wide open. I think it's wide open. There is one team that I don't want to play in the first round of the playoffs from the Boston Bruins, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning. And even them, you could trick me into thinking they could beat them in a 7-game series because Vasilevsky has been bad coming out of the break. He's been bad coming out of the break. 889 last I looked last night.
So do you have, because I have also been looking at the standings and looking at their schedule and other teams' schedules and kind of, running it through the simulators as far as all the outcomes could go. In your mind, Ty, do you have a point total that the Bruins need to hit in order to make sure that they are probably going to make it into the playoffs right now? And especially, I know you and RJ have talked about it many, many times over the last couple of weeks, but you look at the point discrepancy between what's going on out west versus, imagine if the Bruins played out west. My goodness gracious, they'd be one of the top teams out there compared to, as you said, it's wide open in the East right now. Mm-hmm. But with 84 points, what do you think that out of the next 13 games, how many can the Bruins afford to give away?
Not many. I think that 99 points is not a lock to get you in. It's not a lock to get you in.
That's the exact number. I was like, if they can get 99 points, I will feel pretty good.
So you need to get 15 over the next 13 games, basically.
That's about 7 or 8 wins out of your next 13.
The Islanders are currently paced to have 99 points and be on the outside looking in.
I think Detroit is around that too. Detroit's about 99, but the simulations I've looked at have them making the playoffs.
Detroit and Boston share the exact same record, 38, 23, and 8. The difference is that the Bruins have one more regulation win than the Red Wings, so they're ahead of them in that tiebreaker, which is important to note. Currently, I was reading an article that mentioned that the Islanders are currently paced to miss the playoffs with 99 points, which would be the most points by a playoff miss in NHL history. That previous record is 96, held by the Boston Bruins back in 14-15 or 15-16. I can't remember the exact one, but it's one of those two Bruins teams that lost on Game 82 and fell out of it that holds that record. So you look at that, and it's going to be difficult. I think the season may very well come down to the game you have tonight against Detroit. Like, this is the most important game of the year, no doubt about it. But then you have 2 more with Columbus that could be a huge turning point or a decider when it comes to this. But it's a really unique spot for the Bruins because I feel like you want to stay in the wild card. I would rather play Buffalo or Carolina than Tampa Bay. That might sound weird, but if you look at that Carolina defense versus how the Bruins play right now, I'm kind of like, you could probably feast in that series. That's a 7-game banger of a series where you're wearing them down every shift, every game, but you're hoping by game 5, game 6, they got nothing in the tank, or you knock one of their defensemen out. Do you want to know the left side of the Carolina defense right now? Can I run this? Can I run you through this real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You have Jacob Slavin at the top, who we all acknowledge is a really good defenseman. Then you have Keandre Miller, who the Rangers were like, yeah, we'll move on. It's okay. We don't want to pay him. Then they have Mike Riley. Remember Mike Riley?
Yes, of course.
They have Mike Riley on pairing 3 right now.
Everybody remembers the Sarge.
I mean...
Oh, no, you're talking about the one...
No, this Mike Riley's softer than Sarge. I'd rather have Sarge on the back end than this Mike Riley, who will give the puck away if you hit him even slightly. The Bruins have nothing but hitters on lines 3 and 4, it feels like. So I would love that matchup. Oh, they have Brandon Bussey, who... Everyone complains about Brandon Bussey and the Bruins moving on from him. No one wants to acknowledge that he fell down the depth chart at the same time. And Carolina's kind of a goalie factory as well, where like they limit shots so well that we could play goalie for the Hurricanes and have a 905. We really could. I firmly believe that. Anyway, but no, to bring back to the point, I do feel like the Bruins have now hit the point where it's March 21st. They have 13 games to go. They're in the playoff structure. They've been in it for a while. You got to finish the job. You got to get in. Got to get in. I'm happy with what Marco Sturm has done this year. I'm happy with what the Bruins have done this year. You got to finish the job. You got to get in. And I'm not, barring something like Swayman getting hurt or Pastrnak getting hurt, something that we can't see coming, they got to get in. That's my feeling. 617-779-0985. Like I said, biggest game of the year tonight in Detroit. Absolutely the biggest game of the year. This is probably the most important Bruins game this late in the season, and I don't even know how long. Because I didn't care about the points record season. I really didn't. I thought it was more important to win games than to get points. Ultimately, didn't happen that way. We all know how that season ended. This is probably the most important game that I can remember the Bruins having, and sort of like boom, 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 every day is important, since I would say probably that 2016-17 season when they fired Claude Julien and brought in Bruce Cassidy, because that team had to go on a run to get in. And they did. They were great under Bruce down that stretch that year. So probably the most important game since that season, I would imagine, for the Boston Bruins, and we'll see how they look tonight. When we come back, we're going to talk with Bob Beers ahead of tonight's game out in Detroit. 617-779-0985. You want to talk to me? You want to talk to Bob? Jump on the lines here. It is the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beers. This is
Morning, Ty. How are you?
Doing well here. It's only the biggest game of the season tonight here for the Boston Bruins. I feel like we're going to be saying that a lot between now and Game 82.
Yeah, until you play Columbus 2 more times, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just for until there's a little X next to their name, saying that they've clinched. I think we're going to be saying this. Just early thoughts on sort of the vibe and the energy. They don't practice yesterday, so they head out to Detroit. The feeling around the team ahead of this game. What do you think the main feeling should be for the Boston Bruins right now?
I mean, they're confident. Why wouldn't you be after last game, right? Last game was a good one for them. You got a morning skate today. It'll be a full morning skate, obviously, without the practice yesterday. And, but they're feeling good, but they still have work to do. It's just you can't let up. Every game's like a playoff game. It's, you say the most important game today. I mean, I loved that game in Montreal the other day. I just thought the atmosphere was fantastic. You're playing against a team that you're fighting with for points. It's, it's Montreal. It's a packed house. Every time a Montreal player goes down, the fans go crazy. They think it's a penalty, and the atmosphere was so good. So, I loved the game the other day that they had against Winnipeg, and now it's time to move on. And you've got Detroit today, and I was looking at Detroit's numbers this morning, and I know that they're missing Dylan Larkin. That's a big part of their lineup, and they relied heavily on 3 lines. I mean, you had 3 guys that played under 10 minutes, one player that played under 4 minutes. So they're pushing. They're pushing right now, but they've won 2 in a row, even without Larkin. They got Kopp back in the lineup, and this is and Detroit's giving the Bruins a hard time. I'm not sure why, but it just seems like they always seem to give them a hard time, especially here in this building.
Yeah, even when the Red Wings weren't, in the playoff picture these last few years, it felt like going to Detroit was always a difficult task for this team. To your point, when you look at,
and they don't like each other, Ty,
no.
Which I like.
Yeah,
I like that.
They really don't. I remember that game last year where Zadorov was just hammering Lucas Raymond to the media, which you don't see a lot anymore. He was just kind of like, no, that guy's crying to the officials. Why is he doing that? It's a man's game. And I was like, ooh, we haven't heard something like this in a long time, it feels like.
But the one thing that I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but you got to stay out of the box.
Right.
You got to stay out of the penalty. They've been harping on this all year about staying out of the penalty box. And when the temperature ramps up, that's when you have to make sure that you're disciplined. And I think that's really important here today. One of the things that's important to do.
Before we talk more about the Winnipeg game, when you look at that 3-game road trip, they get 4 of a possible 6 points. Do you think that win in Washington, beyond the obvious of getting the monkey off their back, do you think that helped them? I know it's a 1-2 record, still 4 points out of 6. Do you think that helped them in those games, and that can help them down the road here?
Yeah, I'm not looking at it as a 1-2 record. I'm looking at it as 4-6.
Right.
And you had to win. They did what they needed to do on that road trip. That's. I understand that you lost 2 games. People don't like to hear that, but it's points right now, and every game's going to be close. I mean, 6-1 the other day against Winnipeg. I get that. I understand that. But that's not the norm. It's just not the norm. A lot of games are so close right now. The other night we were scoreboard watching during the Bruins win against Winnipeg, and it was nice to see that the teams that won the games in regulation, so the other teams weren't getting at least a point. You know what I mean? It's so. I just think that a lot of things are close right now, and you get points wherever you can get them. You're not going to have 3-on-3 in the playoffs. You got to get to the playoffs, but you're not going to have 3-on-3 in the playoffs. So don't get overly concerned about what overtime or shootouts look like for you. So they're fun games right now. But I heard you right off the top there saying that you got to finish it off and get into the playoffs, and I totally agree with you. This is they've done enough to get themselves there. They put themselves in a great position. Every game is a playoff game now between now and the end of the season, and let's get it done.
Yeah, and it's kind of it reminds me, when they get overtime losses, I'm like, you know what, you want the win, but you're like, good, because these were conversations that we were having back in October, November when we're saying, they're leaving too many points on the board,
they squandered points early in the year,
right? And even you can even argue that they squandered points in Pittsburgh, 2 weeks ago. Like it's so to get
definitely.
point, it's just like I don't care. I just get something out of these games. You mentioned the playoff race. Have you seen anything like this where it feels like there's just no give every night? It's been incredible to watch this race right now because it feels like there's just every night you gotta win because the teams around you are winning. I can't remember the last time I saw a race this tight. It feels like.
I love it. I mean, it's meaningful games. It's so good because of last year. Last year we were just like, what are we watching?
Ping pong balls.
It wasn't. Well, yeah, it wasn't. It was not good last year. And I mean, I don't know. Do people realize? And you tell me, Ty. You're on social media. Like, do people realize that the Bruins would be in first place in the Pacific Division right now?
Oh yeah, no, it's a common refrain I hear from a lot of people.
So they'd be in first place in the Pacific. That's how different the two conferences are. I mean, you got the big three out west, who are great, right? Colorado clinched last night. Colorado and Dallas and Minnesota. We'll see both of those teams in the TD Garden next week.
Right.
So, the Bruins have a tough schedule. There's some good teams coming through here, and teams that games mean something to them. But right now, all you can focus on is tonight. Detroit. It's a late one, right? 8:15, I think, is a start for tonight. National TV. This is biggest game of the year until you play Columbus twice moving forward, and all the other games coming up.
It feels so nice to have a meaningful Detroit-Boston primetime game, because last year we had this game and we were kind of like, this game's going to be at 8 p.m.? Really? Remember that one? I think it was a 2-1 game. It was a close game, but neither team was really in it.
Honestly, I do not remember it.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
I put a lot of those games at the end of the season last year out of my memory.
That's the game where Jacob Lauko donated his face to Austin Watson, I believe it was, who beat him up. No, but when you look at Detroit, you mentioned that these teams don't like each other. These games have been close. I look at those games and I look at Detroit skill guys as making the difference on the power play, and that's something that, as you alluded to, you got to stay out of the box. Is that the biggest key heading into tonight's game?
Well, it's one of them. I mean, I just think having your compete level where it needs to be, and I don't. There's games this year where it hasn't been there, and I think that's true for every team. I don't think today's an option. I don't think any of the games, down the stretch are an option right now. I think you have to have your compete level where it needs to be, and certainly staying out of the box, just because even without Dylan Larkin, it seems like they've hurt you a little bit on the power play, and that's just the eye test. I don't even have numbers to back that up, but they're a team that's good. They're not great. You're ahead of them in the standings technically because you've got one more regulation win. You're tied in points, but you're looking at their lineup and. No Larkin. They got Kopp back last game, and he had a good game. DeBrincat had a good game, and they beat Montreal. That was a huge game for them, right? So the Bruins just played Montreal. In Montreal, that was a big game, and Bruins got 1 point out of it. And then Montreal came into Detroit. Detroit had to win that. They won it. So they're stepping up too. So this is. This is playoff hockey right now. We're already in the playoffs, without being there. It's just that's the type of games we're looking at.
And when you look at how they entered tonight's game, that game on Thursday against Winnipeg, they score 6 goals, as you mentioned. What'd you like about that game beyond just the 6 goals for the Bruins?
I liked the Zacha line and McAvoy and Aspero. And the pluses that they were against Scheifele's line. Because Scheifele's line is the biggest. If they're not scoring, Winnipeg's probably not winning, right? So we know that. Scheifele and Connor, I think they were both -3 in that game. And, other than one really dominant shift in the third period, that the Scheifele line just was really good. They didn't give them a whole lot. They were pretty good against that line. And Swayman. Swayman was, he was great when he needed to be. That save he made in the second period, who was that on? Velarde, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The one-timer on Velarde, and then the backdoor pass to, on Velarde. He made a couple 2-on-1 saves, and Bruins gave up a couple 2-on-1s in the first period on pinches that were probably, ill-advised. And he was just calm and confident, right? And the only goal that beat him was a tip in by Taves, which no goaltender was going to stop. It was a great tip in the third period. He was really good. So, but that line, so you don't have last change today, right? We're in Detroit. If you're on the road, you don't get last change. So it's a little bit different here, but really like the way that line performed and the way that, McAvoy and Ashbro were asked to play against the Scheifele line, all night. And, they were good.
We talked so much about Pavel Zacha and Victor Arvidsson when we talk about that line and why they've been able to be good this year. Casey Middlestad has I think 36 points in 59 games or thereabouts. What has allowed him to be successful and to find his footing despite playing on the wing, being a natural centerman his whole life?
He should have 2 the other night.
Yeah,
at least 2 the other night. He was good. He was really good. It's just he's been pretty reliable on the wall. Playing on the wing, you had to get Zacha in the middle, and this line kind of got formed out of nowhere, right? Beginning of the year, Middlestad was a healthy scratch. Arvidsson was kind of playing injured. Zacha was playing on the wing, and Middlestad was in the middle. They were trying to find their footing and trying to find their, what the best combination would look like. And this line has been a constant now for Marco and his coaching staff. It's been a reliable line. That's a line that they deploy on home ice against the top line of the other team. And you could probably play the Corrali line, maybe, against another team's top line. You could play other players against them, but that line's just reliable in all kind of zones for them right now. And the puck's finding them. I love the way that, confidence just goes. Arvidsson's over 40 points right now. He's 19 goals, over 40 points in limited amount of games. So when he's been healthy, that line's been effective. And so that I like what Middlestad has done on that left wing. At the beginning of the year, I was not impressed with his game. It needed to be better, and it's picked up. He's been good. He's been good, and he's been a nice complement to those two.
Yeah, I think that's what you have to like most about it, because I thought that Middlestad had that one game in the preseason where he gave the puck away like 3 times on the same shift, and I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work here, man. And then he gets scratched, and you're like, what's going on? This guy's making a lot of money.
He was a healthy scratch,
right?
He's a healthy scratch. Yeah.
And he comes back and he kind of says, I want to make my family name proud. I want to do this and do that. And he's been great since coming back. And it's really interesting, Bob, the Avalanche top line of Lehkonen, McKinnon, and Necas has a plus 21 at 5-on-5 this year. The second best line in hockey in that regard is the Zacha, Arvidsson, Middlestad line. They're a plus 19 this year at 5-on-5 play. You wouldn't think that back in September if we were talking. Like that's how good and effective they've been for Marco Sturm's team this year. It's been remarkable.
Well, I'm more of an eye test, but I'll take your word for it. That sounds about right. That's how good they've been, how reliable they've been, and he puts them. That's who he's going to put out there against top line on the other. Who your opponent, and they were good the other day. Definitely. The Scheifele line was frustrated. They had that great shift. You remember the great shift they had in the third period where they probably had 5 chances.
Oh, yeah.
The Bruins couldn't get the puck out of the zone, right? And that could have made the game 4-2.
Exactly, yeah.
And they weren't able to score. And once that shift was over, it just everything calmed down after that. And then the Bruins scored a couple more goals and made it 6-1. But it just that one shift was a tough one. But other than that, during that game, it was good.
Yeah, and I think these kind of games, like the one we saw on Thursday, and I know it got a little dicey there out of the gate in the third period. Those kind of games where it's not so mentally and physically taxing. Not to say that any game is not taxing, but you know what I mean. Like, it's not overtime. It's not 1-1 with 5 minutes left in the third period. Like, I feel like those games might be so critical to this team, given the back-to-backs, given the condensed schedule. Like, they're going to need more of these kind of games, I feel like. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, there's a mental and a physical component, right? There's games where you're just not going to have your legs and nothing's going right for you. You can't make a pass. You can't make a play. You can't get there to make a play. But mentally, you've got to be dialed in, and it gives you a chance if you're mentally dialed in. So the schedule is what it is. Every team's going through it. They played exactly the same amount of games as Detroit has. So, and this is a playoff game. You've got to be dialed in today, both mentally and physically, and that's just something that unacceptable if you can't at this time of year. Like I said, they're playoff games right now, and you're in it, and they're still looking for a couple guys to kind of get going. They're winning games without some of their key guys really going the way that they need to. And we've talked about them, right? We talked about them last week. Geeky, who's trying to find it, and Lindholm, who's been they both been better, but they're not quite there yet. And if those two guys get going, all of a sudden now you've got another line that's going because they're playing together. And I think it was a help the other day to have Reichel on that line to give them a little energy. But they still need. There's a little bit more for them that they need to get going in order to be effective to the point where they're making a difference.
I agree. 617-779-0985. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to take some phone calls. Myself, Bob Beers, live from Detroit, here on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Stay tuned for more of the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show on the Sports Hub.
Before we take a couple of calls here, I actually wanted to ask you more about Lukas Reichel and what he brought. I thought he was as advertised. The speed was there. Gets a kind bounce on the goal. But overall, I felt like he had some jump, and maybe he brought a little bit of jump to those struggling players like Lindholm and Geekie on that third line.
I think so. Yeah, he did some good things. He can make plays. I mean, like you said, as advertised. I liked the second power play. I thought that there was only one power play in the game, but I thought that unit was pretty good in that department. And they generated some good opportunities. They were just a little off, right? But good, effective. Him and Arvidsson had some good chances. Middlestat hit the post, right? So the second power play was better than the first in that game, and the only power play opportunity that they had. But yeah, speed, skill. He helped win a board battle in the third period. It led to the sixth goal. It wasn't, a huge goal, but it was still important to win, battles. And it's important for him as a player to get more and more acclimated to, Bruins system and the way that they want to play and what you want to do and how you have to, be effective in order to win games down the stretch. So, liked a lot of what he did. There were a couple things that, certainly can be cleaned up, but you could say that about any player, right? So, yeah, good first impression. And did he help Lindholm and Geekie with some speed and some skill on that left wing? I think so. And, can it continue tonight? He's running on a lot of adrenaline right there. And, you're on a new team. You're on your third team in the same year. Message sent. It's like, you get traded for a sixth rounder. That's, all right, time to figure it out, right? He's a first round draft pick. I think he got traded for a fourth rounder to go to Vancouver and then a sixth rounder to come to Boston. So, it's Don. I think Donnie Sweeney said it as soon as when the Bruins that the press conference he had after the Bruins picked him up, he said he's got to learn how to play on the inside. Right? He's got all the skill, talent, speed. Now he's got to learn how to play on the inside a little bit, and that's when games get really important. So, good first impression, definitely. Liked what he brought, and hopefully he can continue to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the board play. That was something that Mark Diver, who covers the Providence Bruins down in Providence, had mentioned that the Bruins were hoping that he would show improvements there to stick in the NHL upon his recall. And so to have immediate results there and immediate, sort of effort there, I think is important. It shows that the message is getting through. And do you make anything of the Sturm and Reichel sort of connection? Sturm knows him from the national team. They're both German. Like, is that a good thing for a player to maybe feel a little bit more comfortable in a new environment?
I don't think it can hurt. I don't know. Sure, that's it makes sense, right? Marco played with his father. I mean, Robert Reichel, was it Robert?
Yes.
Is that who it was? Yeah, he was a good player. He was a good player in the NHL. I don't think it can hurt. That's until he starts playing for me. Then so it's all up to him. It's not. I think there's good that there's a familiarity there, but it's up to him. He's a first-round draft pick for Chicago. That Chicago traded him to Vancouver for a low-round pick, and Vancouver traded him to Boston for a lower-round pick. So it's up to him.
Can't go much lower than a sixth,
There you go. So not anymore. I mean, I was a 10th-round pick, so it's just but it's up to him. I mean, you're a first-round pick a couple of years ago. What, 4 years ago? Is that what it was?
2020, I believe. Yeah.
6 years ago. Sorry. So it's up to him now to figure it out and say, I want to be in this league, and I want to be a player that makes a difference. And he made a difference the other day, but that's one game. Now he's got to continue to do it.
One guy whose future is not in doubt in terms of his NHL status, but is Pavel Zacha. And Tom in Boston has a thought on Pavel Zacha. Tom, what's going on today?
Hi guys, you're right. Talk of the town. Boston this week has been Pavel Zacha. Great post-Olympic run. He's eligible July 1 for an extension. I think the Bruins should do it. I think it'll probably be 6 years or 7 years for over $7 million. That's fine. That's the going rate. My worry is that he's just, 3 or 4 years from now, he's the third line center. Hagens is the first line center. What do you do with Elias Lindholm? I know that's the other, they're both going to be, $7.5 million third line or fourth line centers. I just don't think that's, even with, obligatory cap going up, I don't think that's sustainable. What is to be done with Elias Lindholm now and going forward? Thanks, guys.
No worries. Thank you for the call, Tom. Beginning with what he said at first, Bob. Pavel Zacha, July 1 eligible extension. I absolutely sign him. This is a guy who I think really can play anywhere and can do it all for your team. And, he scored 21 goals at least every year except for last year when he was hurt, since he's been coming to Boston, since he came to Boston. So this is a guy that I want to keep because he works here. And, there's no certainty that replacement would work here the way that Pavel Zacha has.
Well, the thing about Zacha is, from a coach's standpoint, he's just low maintenance. He just shows up and does his job. He might not be at the best as every game, but most games he is. He wants to play center. He's made that clear, and he's better at center than he is at wing. And I just, I'm kind of looking at this year. I'm not looking kind of beyond. I understand what the caller was saying there. I want them to make the playoffs this year, and I'm curious of what this year looks like with them in the playoffs. He mentioned Hagens a couple years from now being the number one center. Is Hagens going to be part of this group here moving forward? There's a lot kind of to look at and unpack kind of moving forward. Do I want Zacha on this team moving forward? Absolutely. Yes. He's just, like I said, low maintenance, kind of does everything right. You've got, I think Middlestad's up for a contract after next year, if I'm not mistaken. Same as Zacha. Mm-hmm. Arvidsson's up for a contract after this year. This has been your most effective line, and the most constant line. Do you keep all of them moving forward? So there's a lot to look at, I think, and unpack moving forward. I'm just looking at this year right now and how can they make the playoffs, and then what can they do if they get there. So this is for me. I'm kind of short-sighted on this, instead of long, looking at the long game. And I know that the Bruins have to look at that. That's their job, but I'm looking at right now and what they can do.
And to wrap things up today, when you look at Elias Lindholm, we've kind of mentioned what he has to do here. Is there anything you're noticing that he's not doing enough of right now, or is it simply he's in his own head and he's not producing and it's kind of compounding for him right now?
I think there's some things he's been doing well. Faceoffs have always been good for him, or mostly, have been good for him. The penalty kill, the power play is struggling. What as a team, what do they need to do right now? It needs to be lockdown defense, and power play needs to be better. Right. I think that those two areas, I think your goaltenders have saved you a few times, especially Swayman, in some games. So that area has to be better for them. The scoring popped out the other day against Winnipeg, but the power play still needs to be better, no question. Earlier in the year, before the Olympic break, especially, the penalty killing needed to be better. So there's always something that needs to be better. We know that, especially for teams that are fighting for a playoff spot. If you're number one in the league, then you can overlook some of those things. But right now, for the Bruins, there's always something that has to be better. And those areas, and if you're asking about Elias Lindholm, more pace. I need to see more pace. I need to see quicker decisions. I need to see just more pace to his game and everything, whether it's decision making or making plays. And that's what I see from him. I like him as a player. I think he's good. I think that there's more there from what he's been giving this year. And I don't know if he's. I heard you talk, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, that he might be battling an injury. I don't know that. I don't see that. I think he's relatively healthy, and he played in the Olympics. And we need a little bit more from him. We need more from Geekie. That goes without saying, right? I mean, offensively, what he's able to provide, his shot, his opportunities, his ability to make plays, that needs to be better right now for the Bruins. So those two players are a focus for me, and the power play, and they go hand in hand because they're both on that first power play.
Yeah, I always feel a little. I hate using this word because I feel like I'm not an NHL player. I'm sitting up on level 9. I'm eating popcorn and candy. I shouldn't be saying this. I just want more competitive shifts. I feel like he's had some shifts that just were non-competitive shifts these last.
You're talking about Lindholm, right?
Lindholm, yeah.
Yes, I wouldn't disagree with that. I more of an impact. Mm-hmm. How does that put it? More of an impact. I think Geekie gives you that. I need more of an impact from Lindholm.
Yep.
And if that's effort, if that's whatever you want to call it, there's more there, no question.
Bob, there should be no shortage of competitiveness tonight. The juices should be flowing. Looking forward to hearing tonight's call of the game. This should be a good one. I'm really hoping we get a really good game here, and there's no reason not to, given the stakes for these two teams with identical records right now in the Eastern Conference playoff picture.
No, and it's funny. There's games where you just get up for a little bit more, and that Montreal game the other day, I was fired up for that one. That was it finally Montreal-Boston impactful game, right? It playoff time, and it's Montreal, so the fans were into it. It was a great atmosphere. Tonight's going to be a pretty good atmosphere as well. Detroit's a good building, and they won 2 in a row. They're right in the playoff hunt. They're technically behind Boston in the standings, even though they got the same amount of points. One less, regulation loss? Regulation win, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah. So this will be a fun game tonight. Just hate that we have to wait around till 8:15 to play it.
I know. It's funny about the Montreal game. I was talking with somebody, and they were like, "I forgot how annoying it is when that entire arena groans when one of their players gets hit."
Oh yeah,
it's unbelievable. You kind of forget that when both teams are bad.
We had to hear the ole 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 after the game, and but they had to wait till after the game to do it. So
yeah,
at least it wasn't like they were doing it with 5 minutes to go in the game. So no, it was fun. That was a great atmosphere, and I expect similar here today.
Awesome, Bob. We can't wait to hear you on the call tonight's game. Should be a good one. Bruins, Detroit. You can hear it live, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Puck drop a little after 8 p.m. We appreciate you taking the time today to join us.
All right, Ty.
Awesome.
Take care.
That was Bob Beers joining us on the expert hotline here. Yeah, if this game doesn't get you fired up and get you ready for playoff hockey, potential playoff hockey, I don't know what would. This is great. This is great, Ryan. After a year ago of the games not mattering and us going, well, I hope the ping pong balls bounce our way, this is so much better.
I'm looking at game to game going, okay, I feel good about this. By the way, it's not 13 games, it's 12 games because I think we're still rooting for Toronto to win that game on Tuesday in the sake of the draft picks. But looking at okay, Columbus and Minnesota. Minnesota's been having a great season. You're right. This is so much more preferred than what. And look, I understand. I ultimately understand why last season had to go the way that it did. And it's one of those things that in the midst of selling out for a record-breaking regular season team and flipping your first-round picks, which I credited Don Sweeney for at the time, and I will still, having also the foresight then to know that it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt down the road, and that was what last year was. That was, okay, we need to rip this Band-Aid. We need to start anew, and we need new faces in here, and we need new cornerstones to start relying on. So I'm happy that it has went this way. I don't know if I am as pot committed to the Bruins need to make the playoffs in order for this to be, in my mind, a successful season. I have been very pleased, and maybe that's because I had such craterish expectations for the team going into the year, but I think you you're hard to find a better first year for an NHL coach than what Marco Sturm has done with this group. Yes, there is talent. Yes, Charlie McAvoy is talented. Yes, David Pastrnak is talented. Morgan Geekie has had stretches where he looked like he was one of the best wings in hockey. And Jeremy Swayman, by the way, has been playing well when they needed him to play well. But ultimately, this was a collection that the front office was saying, you guys got to earn your spots because we don't know who is going to go where. There are jobs to be had. And I'm happy with the guys that have risen to the occasion. I don't know if I'm quite at the same level of epiphany that you are right now. I would love to see this team make the playoffs. Obviously, I would love to see them get Montreal at some point too. They would probably have to get out of the first round. All that being said, though, I'm happy right now. See, this is the house money argument. It wasn't the Patriots. I think the Bruins have the house money, again, because of just how low I thought they could go this year being at the bottom of the league. No. They have made me look completely foolish and wrong, and I'm happy about that. Whether there's a playoff trip at the end of the season, I don't know. I'm hoping for it. Of course I'm hoping for it. I would like to see what this team could do in the playoffs when the game changes a little bit. But as of right now, I'm very pleased with where they are going and what they have done this year to kind of reinforce, like what they did and didn't do at the trade deadline and what they might end up doing this offseason in order to add more to this group. I'm not saying that your window is open, but you're in a better position right now than I anticipated, and I think maybe some people within the building anticipated as well.
617-779-0985. Let's take a quick break here, check out the headlines, and then right back to your calls. I see you guys in the line. Thank you for being patient. We're going to get right to you here on the other side here on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
The Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show will continue with Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston.
617-779-0985. A lot to get to today. The playoff race, the Bruins Red Wings as a whole, James Higgins, Pavel Zacha, whatever you want to talk about. We got time for you today. I'm going to go with Steve and Sonam. Thank you for being patient as always, Steve. What can we do for you today?
Hi, Ty. Thanks for taking the call. I'm wondering, I'm concerned. I'm wondering where Higgins is going to fit into the picture. I thought he'd be in a perfect spot to play that third line left wing, and then Reichel had the type of game that he had. So, got an interest in see what you guys think about that with Higgins' spot in the lineup. And also, I have to be watching. I'm watching the Toronto Maple Leafs also. I have a quick question, Ty. I know they've got that top 5 draft pick is protected. If they end up outside of 5, but through the lottery, get into the top 5. So the Bruins still get that pick, or how does that work? I'm a little bit confused about that. I'm interested in watching them finish the season, too. Thanks, Ty. I'd like to hear from you.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you, as always. So if the pick is dependent on where the lottery is. So, like, if Toronto finishes the year 7th, right? Let's just say they're 7th or 8th in the NHL standings, but they move up into the top 5, then that pick will go to Toronto. If that pick is top 5, Toronto will keep their 2026 first round pick, and then in 2027, if their pick is in the top 10, the Flyers will send that. Or, I'm sorry, if that pick is in the top 10, the Maple Leafs get to choose that either Boston gets that pick in 2027 or the Flyers get that pick in 2027. And so there's a little bit of confusion there, I know, but they would have to be in the top 5 post lottery for the Bruins to not get that pick. Joining us now on the expert hotline live from Detroit is Ryan Johnston. Ryan, no confusion at all with those picks, right? It's only the most confusing process in the world.
I know. You basically have the same pick being dealt twice in 2 different deals. It does get a little dicey there. And my question is, what do you think it would take for the Maple Leafs to make the decision to give that pick to the Bruins instead of Philadelphia? Because I think the pick the next year becomes then unprotected, the 2028 pick.
Yes.
So, like, you know, they'd have to look at it and say, like, are we going to be picking in the top 3 next year? Because we can't give Boston that pick. We'd have to give that to Philadelphia. So that's the calculus that will have to come into play.
Yeah, exactly. Like if their pick is top 5, like this year, they're going to be happy because they're not giving a top 10 pick to Boston. However, that 2027, like you're kind of doubling down in a lot of respects, right? Because then you have to pick, okay, which one's going to Philly and which one's going to Boston.
How good do you think your team's going to be, and how fast? Right? I mean,
right.
Is this just was this year just a blip on the radar, and you're going to be back in the playoffs next year? If then, no big deal. But if you're potentially going to deal away some of your big pieces over the offseason and start to rebuild, then it's a totally different story.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think Elliot Friedman had the report around the deadline saying that Austin Matthews was on board for like a retool or a mini rebuild, whatever you want to call it. But I'd wonder about a guy like William Nylander, who likes playing meaningful hockey and has been good in meaningful hockey. Would he be on board or would he want out? Like there's a lot that goes into it. The best advice, Ryan, is to not suck. If you don't suck, you don't got to worry about these things. Unfortunately, it's not always that easy. But speaking of 2 teams that don't suck, we have the Boston Bruins and the Detroit Red Wings. This has a big fight feel to it tonight, I got to say. Bruins, Red Wings tied record-wise. Bruins ahead of them by way of one more regulation win. What is the vibe and the energy ahead of this game?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and I heard you and Beersy talking about the game in Montreal the other night. It was kind of the same thing. It's just, you these regular season games that take on this extra meaning. And I know the guys have talked about how they're basically in playoff mode, and you have to be at this point because every game is so big and you need points every single night just to keep up with everybody that's around you in the playoff race. But for a game like this, for a game against Montreal, original 6 matchups, divisional matchups, they're essentially 4-point games if you can win them in regulation. And and there's a lot of history there. And so this is one of those that, you would, if you told me exactly what the circumstances were going to be and that there's, playoff spots on the line, This is one of those that you would certainly circle multiple times on the calendar.
Do you look at where they are right now, the Bruins, that is, and you kind of say, like, all right, because I began the show today saying, like, they got to get in. Like, not a knock on the season to this point, but you got to finish the job. Do you feel the same way, or has this season already been sort of a success because you've clearly found a solid head coach in Marco Sturm?
Yeah, I think there's a school of thought that certainly, the strides forward that this group has taken, that Marco Sturm has kind of led them to this point. There's a level of success, in this season, regardless of how this finishes. But I think I'm with you that it would be a real bitter taste to finish off this season and not make the playoffs as good as they have been. And it really is crazy. I mean, there's somebody who deserves to get in is not getting in the playoffs this year. Whether in some way, shape, or form. Right now, it's the Islanders that are on the outside looking in. It could be Columbus, it could be Pittsburgh, it could be Boston, it could be Detroit, it could be Montreal. It could be teams that have been in the structure almost all the way through. Are potentially in danger of falling out. So somebody in here is going to get disappointed big time. Especially when you look at, and again, this goes back to the playoff format and all that, and I'm not in favor of going 1-16, but, we were talking about it the other night. The Bruins would be the fourth best record in the Western Conference, and they're, a point from potentially being out of the playoffs in the East. That's how lopsided things have been over here.
If the league did go 1-16, it'd be Bruins Montreal. So you know what? If there's a year to do it, it's right now. So why not?
Well, you got me sold then. I'm sold.
Let's do it. Why
Call
not?
Gary
Who cares?
Bettman. He's not going to take your phone call, but he's still defending this play out of the division thing, which is a whole. We'll get to that when we get to that. But listen, I'm with Bill Guerin. I don't think that one of the top three teams in the league should be knocked out of the playoffs in the first round, guaranteed either.
No, we've talked about it. The playoff format has to change. I mean, it's never gonna, unfortunately, but I think it's finally gaining traction. I've been beating this drum for like 9 years now, and I feel like it's finally gaining traction of like, hey, this format's stupid. Let's stop it. It's dumb. It doesn't make any damn sense. But to your point, bringing it back to what you said, though, Ryan, like we're currently looking at a potential pace here, and Ryan Garvin and I were talking about this in the first hour, like, you're looking at a team that might have 99 points and miss the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, which is just crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there's, a huge, when you're playing through the Eastern Conference and you play the schedule that you do, you see, obviously we see the Atlantic Division teams, a lot, and you see the Metro Division teams 3 times apiece. It's not like you can look at a lot of games on the schedule and say, well, there were a lot of bottom feeders in the East that, couldn't even put together a game. Okay, the Rangers had a really bad season. That there's no question about that. But there aren't too many teams in the East where you go, oh, that was an easy one. It's crazy how difficult this whole campaign has been when you're playing all those teams pretty much every night.
Yeah, and you look at where they are right now. I think what's been really, impressive and annoying, if you're a Bruins fan, is how there's just no give every night. Every night there's no give. There's a team winning that you need to lose. A lot of these games, too, have been like head-to-heads that really don't help you. I think the other night it was Detroit and Montreal. You're like, can both teams lose? I like, what's going on here? Like, there hasn't been a lot of, say, the Blue Jackets are today you get one. The Blue Jackets are playing the Kraken, which is beneficial. Just you hope the Kraken win, right? But you haven't had a lot of those games when it comes to scoreboard watching right now, which I think is making this race really interesting. Ryan, I can't remember a race quite like this in a long time. It feels like this is probably the best playoff race we've seen maybe in the last, I want to say 10 years. That I'm just not focused on it like I normally have been because the Bruins have been a division winner more than a wild card team.
Yeah, and usually it comes down to, you kind of know by now, okay, there's maybe 6 teams that are going to be in, and then, the last 2 spots are going to be up for grabs with, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams who are, kind of maybe on the outside, have a chance if they can really go on a run. Here it's, as we talked about, you look at a team like Montreal or Detroit or Boston, it's like they've been playing such good hockey and putting up so many good points, and they're still only 1 point clear of being in. It's crazy. And, to your point about the scoreboard watching, the game Detroit against Montreal the other night, it's like, I don't really care who wins, just make sure it happens in regulation. Make sure both teams don't come out of that with points. And then, you look at, I think it was Wednesday night, I brought it up on the air the other night. I think there were 6 games on the schedule the other night. 4 of them had some sort of playoff implication. There were 2 games with St. Louis and whoever who were clearly out of the race. I think the Devils were playing the Rangers. And so it's like you eliminate those. But all 4 games that had playoff implications, they all went to overtime. So it's like, you're right. It's like it's impossible to gain much ground on anybody, even when you're idle, because just about everybody's getting at least 1 point every game.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. Bringing it back to the Bruins here, I know their road trip, it's 1-0-2. I think more importantly, it's 4 out of a possible 6 points. Do you feel like that road trip is enough to get them feeling good about their road game and feeling confident entering tonight's game in Detroit?
I would think so. I mean, they played really well the other night in Montreal. I thought, it was more of a conservative game plan against the Canadians, and Marco Sturm said that after the game that they were a little bit more careful than they typically are. They're always going to be a defense first team, but even in that game, the defense wasn't pinching a whole lot, wasn't as aggressive as we've seen for the most part, because they didn't want to give up odd man rushes to that team and allow the Canadians to use their speed. So I get that. But it was a really good game. And yeah, I thought, they kind of turned the corner. It took a 9-round shootout, and it took Jeremy Swayman, stopping all 9 to beat Washington last Saturday and finally end that winless streak on the road. But I think that injected a little bit of extra confidence in them. And, they go on and, they lose a couple of overtime games. I mean, you think about how close they were to making that 6-point trip instead of a 4-point trip, right? You had, they hit the post. McAvoy hits the post in overtime and right before the goal gets scored down at the other end, that against New Jersey. And then in Montreal, Zakas gets the breakaway in overtime and, misses, and it goes down the other end and they score. So, I mean, those 2 go the other way and, you get 5 points or you get 6 points on that trip. And you come out of it feeling totally differently. But as it was, I think most of us went into that trip and said, hey, 4 out of 6 points wouldn't be bad. You don't want to lose 2 games to get there, but you got there. And so you take it.
Right. I think any road trip over 500, especially one involving a back-to-back, and I say 500 in terms of point percentage, I think you got to take at this point, at this time of year, especially, I talked about this with Bob last segment, think of all the points left on the table back in October, November, even December, right? They left some points on the board, right? Games that they shouldn't have lost, that they lost. I go back, you have the games that you gave up late goals, but even that game, that Vancouver game in Boston right before Christmas, that should have been a win, and you settle for a shootout loss. And so to make those up in some fashion, I'll take. I don't care. I can't be picky about points this time of year, given everything else that we've mentioned at this point about this playoff race and how it's shaping up in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and even later on, later in the season. And listen, if they make the playoffs, all will be forgotten. If they miss the playoffs by a point or 2, we'll circle back to those. We'll look at, the kind of the no-show game they had in Nashville later on in the season. The loss at Philadelphia against the team that was pretty much dead and buried at that point. Those are the kinds of games. There's another one, the overtime loss to the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, where they blew a lead, ended up only getting 1 point, against one of the worst teams in the league. So, there's a lot of, there'll be a lot of those. There always are, over the course of an 82-game season. There are always going to be some that get away from you. they're I'm sure if we went back and looked at the glass half full, as Beers always reminds me to do, that we could find some games there where the Bruins pulled a rabbit out of the hat here, and and ended up with a point or two that maybe we didn't expect them to get. So you hope it all evens out in the end, and that this team gets rewarded for what's been a heck of a season.
Yeah, and every team has those kind of games, right? I mean, geez, the Blue Jackets had to fire their head coach. They think of all the points they left from the table by having the old coach before making the switch to Rick Bowness. So it all, the cream rises to the top, right? As Macho Man Randy Savage once said, and so you gotta focus on that if you're the Boston Bruins. Ryan, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, let's bang out some calls together, shall we?
Sounds good.
Awesome. This is Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. We'll be right back. Myself and Ryan Johnston.
Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beers. This is The Show.
hybrid or our full line of hybrid and electric vehicles today. Jeremy Swayman, his game is on point right now, Ryan. I think he's been the MVP out of the break, and he's got to continue to be the MVP down the stretch for the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, it's, I mentioned this on the air the other night, but especially at TD Garden, Jeremy Swayman this year, I looked at the home numbers for goalies all over the league. Of any goaltender who's played at least 10 home games this year, Jeremy Swayman has the number 1 save percentage, and he's number 2 in goals against average among all goalies around the league this year who have played at least 10 home games. I mean, he's been that good at TD Garden, and unfortunately for him, there have been some road games this year where I think the guys in front of him have really kind of, have gotten themselves dominated. You think back to, a few of those games, the game in Ottawa, a game in Dallas, and places like that where they
the game in Seattle was really the game in Seattle was one of the sneaky big ones, I think, there.
Yeah, games where the guys in front of him just really didn't have it that night, and so his numbers got inflated. But overall, I mean, he has been exactly what you hope a goalie, a starting goaltender is going to be for you.
With a thought on that, we have Tim in Nashua. Tim, what's going on?
Guys, watching the past few games with Jeremy playing so well, I want everybody's opinion. Is Korpisalo strong enough to back him up? Do we need to see DiPietro? And I'm kind of leaning that way. I want to know how you guys feel about that.
Thank you for the call, Tim. With Korpisalo, he battles, but there's always a leaky goal or two that you're and it's frustrating because he is one of the higher paid backups in the NHL right now, and you brought him in for a stabilizing presence. Now, you got 2 good months out of him, which is 2 better months than you got a year ago, but it does feel like they're going to have to ride Swayman given the uncertainty. And I don't think DiPietro's coming in to give you more certainty than Korpisalo would, as weird as that may sound right now.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know really what he is at the NHL level yet, right? I mean, we got an extremely small sample size when, that first game out of the Olympics when he had to come in when Korpisalo got pulled for the concussion spotter. But, with the exception of that, I mean, he's been terrific in Providence here, and hopefully that will translate for him when he gets to the NHL on a full-time basis. But, right now, Korpisalo is, he's the guy that you've got. You're going to play him sparingly, I would expect, down the stretch here because of the importance of these games. The team's kind of in playoff mode, and, in playoff mode, your starting goaltender is going to start. And, Jeremy Swayman has continued to play really well. Hopefully he does again tonight. You do have a few back-to-backs still left, and, you'll have to figure out how you want to deploy the goalies in that. We got one coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday with Toronto and Buffalo. I think the decision will be interesting to see how that shakes out. But, this is Swayman's team, and he's going to be the one who's going to, largely determine whether they make the playoffs or not.
What would you do if you were figuring out the goalie situation for next week? Would you give Swayman at home against Toronto or on the road against Buffalo?
Yeah, it's always I always kind of wonder about these decisions because you figure, okay, if you play Swayman at home against Toronto, you should win that game, right? I mean, Toronto's with the season that they're having, and Swayman the way he plays at home, and confidence that this team has at home. But you also look at it and go, well, Korpisalo ought to be able to win that game too. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Buffalo, who do you want to have against, a team that hardly ever loses, and is it going to make a difference against a team like that? So it's you really kind of have to go with your gut. And then there's also the possibility of going back-to-back games with Swayman if you really want to push it. I asked Marco Sturm about that with the back-to-back last week in New Jersey and Montreal, and he said, yeah, we had to give legitimate thought to playing Swayman back-to-back because he's been that good. You have to think about it. And so I almost might say, let's start Swayman on Tuesday night, and then let's talk to him. Let's see what kind of game it ends up being, and let's talk to him on Wednesday and make a decision about whether he feels like he's up to a challenge of going back-to-back in Buffalo.
Going back to Tim's original call about Korpisalo and DiPietro and what you do, I do think this is probably the last year of Korpisalo. I have to imagine they try to find him a home in the offseason, and you give it to DiPietro, or you try to. I feel like if a guy's in the minors and he's giving you 2 straight years of being the best goalie in the AHL, you kind of want to give that guy a look at a certain point, right? And the Brendan Bussey success story out in Carolina may influence that decision a little bit. I know Bussey's bigger than DiPietro, substantially at that, but it does feel like, all right, you're going to have to make this call here at a certain point. And I also think, Ryan, it might be kind of telling that, the Bruins, they have Philip Spedvac graduating from Providence College this year, so he might be turning pro. They had Albin Boya from UMaine in camp a year ago, and now they're going to invite Max Lundgren from Merrimack to Dev Camp this summer. So clearly they're getting younger at that position, right? And so you just wonder, what does that mean? Does that mean that DiPietro is going to graduate and join the Bruins next year, or what's going to happen here? But it does feel like we might be running the end of the Korpisalo in Boston course at the end of the year. I mean, that's just my own feeling. I mean, how do you look at it?
Yeah, I think wasn't there I'm blanking on his name, unfortunately, and I don't have my computer in front of me. The kid that went to development camp with them this year said he's Czech, I believe. There's
Boya,
another one that they were. Say again?
Boya from Maine. He's Swedish, but
no.
Oh, there's another one.
No, I'm trying to. He may not.
Yeah. He went to. Did he play at Harvard? Is that the one I'm thinking? I can't. I know who you're talking about, but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so it's like listen, you've got to continue to develop these pipelines, like you said. I mean, when DiPietro is going to be he's going to win the goaltender of the year award in the American Hockey League for the second year in a row. I mean, he's got to be, pushing for a chance to play in the NHL. You bring a guy like that up, and if he can stick, if he's worth it, it also saves you some money against the cap, which you can use to help improve your team elsewhere. Listen, Korpisalo is, he probably deserved to play more last year. Expressed his frustration at the end of last year that he didn't get a chance to play more. This year, at times he has shown, the ability to get more minutes. And then there's been some games of late where, it hasn't been quite as strong, and, the rebounds, have still been an issue and whatnot. As you said, he battles, and listen, I think more often than not, both goaltenders have given you a chance to win this year. But I think you're right. I think, the organization's going to have a decision to make here going forward in this offseason about what to do with that second goaltender position.
Zajac is who we're thinking of. He's currently the Providence Bruins backup. Yeah. I was thinking way below that rank for some reason.
We saw him a little bit in camp, and I saw him at the development camp in Buffalo, and he was impressive. I thought kid's got a little game, so. That's a guy that, might have a future in the organization as well.
Yeah, and you've kind of been a goalie factory, whether that's been Bob Essenza up here or Mike Dunham down in Providence. Like you've been able to develop these goaltenders, and I think at a certain point you got to kind of trust that, right? Like you got to trust that to maybe build up a younger player who might not be as polished or have the NHL resume that a Jonas Korpisalo does, but you've got to believe in what you're doing, and you got to believe in your development team. And I think they might be hitting that point, especially you mentioned like the money being spent. Like you're going to have to spend this money elsewhere, I think, just to kind of plug the rest of the roster here and what you have moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I think, when you kind of look at the cap, and this is all kind of forward-thinking stuff, but, if Hagens is playing here next year, that's going to be an entry-level contract, right? There's a savings in that position. And, you start to look at, when you bring in those younger guys, that's kind of the ideal scenario, because you can augment them with some higher-priced veterans because, you're getting those kids on the cheap.
One of the things that we haven't gotten to that I want to get to, Ted in Rhode Island has a thought on the power play. Ted, what's up?
How you doing, guys? I don't know about you, but like the most frustrating thing is that the power play entry. Okay, and I'm like, I've coached McLaughlin and Callahan. Now the thing is, if they throw it on net, force a face-off, Lindholm's 50% on face-offs, and you might save time, and you might be better at it. So would you take 50% control in the power play?
Yeah, absolutely, Ted. Thank you for the call. The entries. So I know the drop pass is part of the game now. I understand that. Like, I think it started with I think the Vancouver Canucks did it more than any team I ever saw in my life back in like the 2010, 2012 kind of range. Like when they had the Sedins and they had Edler and they had those guys back there, they would do it all the time, and it worked out. Not everyone does it. And I think it works if you have the speed and if you have like the guy that can blast through, the Red Rover line, so to speak. I don't think the Bruins have that. And that part of it has been so frustrating watching them just kind of go back to the well again and again and again. And, you talk with Marco a lot before the games. What has he thought about the power play and how to fix those struggles that they've gone through so far, Ryan?
Yeah, first thing, we asked him, I think Beersy asked him earlier in the week about, the potential of maybe changing a little bit of personnel on that first power play unit because things have gotten so stale here out of the break. And, he was steadfast in saying, no, these guys have been, they've been the unit that we've used all year. When we were the third best team in the league going into the Olympic break, they were the guys who got us there. So we're going to kind of let them work their way out of it. I agree with you that, it gets, there are times where it maybe gets a little predictable, doing the same thing over and over again, especially when when it hasn't been working very well. I think part of the issue, ends up being that, you talked about the speed factor. I think it doesn't need to be, that you've got a guy who just is burning through the neutral zone with a puck, but you've got to move it faster. And, that's been part of the issue, I think, with, especially over the last week or so with some of their entries, is just coming through the neutral zone. It's just not quick enough. And, you're not giving the defenders who are stacked up at the blue line a reason to back off and allow you into the zone. So I think that's part of, what we've talked about is, everything's just got to be done a little bit faster with a little bit more sense of urgency. You can tell clearly there's some confidence issues there with that group because it just hasn't been good here for the last, closing in on them, 3 weeks or so, 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks. So it's, that's to me something that they've just got to fix. And, we saw it, the second power play unit only got one opportunity the other night. The whole team did. But, the addition of Reichel to that unit seemed to make a big difference. And, I talked to Casey Middlestat after the first period, right after that power play, and, how did you guys get on the same page so fast? He said, no, we just got a little bit of practice this morning, and, and it seemed to click. So, hopefully that'll continue here, and the new addition will make a difference on that group.
We got Justin and Lynn giving us his keys to Bruins Red Wings. What's going on, Justin?
Kai, the key to the game tonight is to get out to a lead because the Bruins have struggled on the road all season long, record-wise, and they've had trouble closing out games. I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Thank you, as always, Justin, for the call. Yeah, Ryan, he mentioned getting out to a lead as a key to the game. I would love just a great first period from the Boston Bruins, a professional, ready to go off the jump, no playing catch-up here. They have no Dylan Larkin, it looks like. So I think a great start would be right with just what the doctor ordered for this game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly when the Bruins are at their best is, we can oftentimes see it right from the opening drop of the puck and, you get a good solid shift and kind of get some energy in the team right away. Against the team like Detroit with as much on the line as tonight, everybody ought to be amped up when this thing starts. I would imagine that, there will be some great energy in the building tonight. So, a first strike, an early strike, would be awesome, to kind of get this thing going.
Yeah, and the other part I would say about that too is like, what lead is safe, right? Given some of the road struggles, they go up 3-0 in Pittsburgh, they lose in overtime. They go up 2-0 in Detroit, they lose 3-2 in overtime. So I don't know, get 5 goals. Would that make you feel good entering tonight's game? But what do you consider?
But ultimately, Ty, you know what? Listen, what are they? It's now 29-0-4 when they lead after 2 periods this year.
Sure.
Right. So if they get yourself a lead, get out in front of this team heading into the 3rd period, and you've at least so far through 33 games they've done that this year, they've guaranteed themselves at least a point, and almost every time it's been 2 points. So, I mean, that's the key to success. This is not a team that's built to try to overcome deficits. They're a team that, they can get a lead and they can, lock things down defensively and protect it.
Absolutely. Ryan is looking forward to hearing the call of tonight's game. 7:30 pregame tonight for the 8:20 puck drop?
8:15 puck drop tonight. Set your clocks. The national folks are they probably are a little wary after the overtime and 9-round shootout last Saturday. So they bumped us up to a quarter after start. So be ready.
There we go. Ready off the jump. I know you're going to be. I know Bob's going to be. And we are going to be as well. Looking forward to hearing on tonight's call of the game here on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan.
Have a good day, Ty.
Awesome. You too. That was Ryan Johnston joining us live from Detroit ahead of the morning skate. We will be right back here. 617-779-0985. Got some time to take some more of your phone calls up until 11 a.m. This is the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Stay tuned for more of the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show on the Sports Hub.
I admittedly did not hear this last night or Thursday, whenever it was.
I watched it happen.
So you watched it live unfold. You watched the man lose his mind live. You didn't help at all.
No. Well, I mean, I said
he's having a crisis. You didn't help him.
No. He's an adult. Joe's done very well for himself. That any of my advice, I did relay the fact that call volume and listener engagement is usually quite strong here on the Hockey Show. But sometimes I think that, hey, maybe you might be just a little too close to it, Ty. And just to give you an idea of what some of the hosts Monday through Friday and the occasional Sunday with Joe are feeling about the team right now, in the sense that Joe thinks that there is maybe a little bit of a lack of buzz for this team that is currently in the playoffs and in a playoff race.
So my feeling on that is that, no, there's buzz, but I think people are jumping back in. If he wants those calls, my professional advice as a part-time radio host, not a full-time radio host, so he can ignore this if he wants.
I'm upset.
He's upset. The almost, I don't want to say demeaning, that's way too strong a term. The patronizing. Minty, well, now that audiences want to talk to you about it because you're being a dink about it. You got to embrace them. You got to bring him in and be like, yo, tell me why Hustadinov is going to be the new Brad Marchand.
Get ready for Husty and Minty.
Right, you can't do that, Joe. You can't, that can't be like the, I want your Bruins calls. By the way, you all sound like children. You can't do that. So that's my only take on that.
I think there is, and I just picked that call.
No, I know.
Because of his reaction to it, but the idea that, maybe the city isn't completely, yes, it's very easy to lock in with what the Patriots are doing when they're successful. Drake May, I get it.
Yeah.
And yes, Jason Tatum is back, and Cade Cunningham is hurt, and the Celtics have an opportunity to jump back to the top of the Eastern Conference. I think with the Bruins, if you haven't been paying close attention to this team, then yeah, all the guys that you fell in love with that had these great playoff runs over the last decade are gone and have been gone for a while. And Husnudinov and Minton and all these guys that are new and contributing, these are the people that you need to know about, I think was more of the point. I don't get it so much as condescending.
No, I know.
You've got a portion of the fan base that I think is not overly invested, and I think that was Joe's point. Because when Joe came in, he's like, all I want to do before Celtics tonight is talk hockey. All I want to do is talk about how good this team looks and how exciting it's been. And Joe had to kind of shake the people a little bit to get that out of them.
And this is a greater picture discussion about Boston sports fans in the year 2026 that listening out there to this, do not take this as a slight. Do not take this as an insult. I think the Patriots broke everyone's brain. I think the Patriots and I think Tom Brady broke everyone's brain, and they think that if you're not a champion, you're not worth their time. When I love the journey. I love the journey from building it to the ground to a champion. I want to be invested in that. I loved the Bridgie Celtics, as they called them. I watched every Patriots game with Mac Jones. I fell asleep for a lot of them, but I watched them. I like the slow build. I think it's more worth it when you win a championship when you're there from the beginning. And I feel like the Patriots broke a lot of our brains now, where we had a caller to Felger and Maz yesterday, and I thought Felger had a great reaction. This is how I react to it, where it's like, oh, they're not going to win, so what does it matter? Okay, then do something else then. Do something else. Then we have a finite time on planet Earth. And if you're going to watch your favorite team be like, who cares? You're going to lose anyways. Just don't watch. Just do something else.
I screened that call with the intention of that reaction because I think that is exactly the point. And I don't know if it's a Patriots thing necessarily, although I think that's a good place to start. But the idea of, they're just going to lose in the first round anyways. What's the point? It's like, well, what? Do you think they were cup contenders? Like, maybe if you went into this year thinking that this Bruins team was going to be a wagon and go all the way to the finals, like, good for you. I think you're, woefully wrong about that. But, going into the season, Of
course, yeah.
But, if that's your prerogative, then so be it. But if you've been following this team as they've kind of ascended to where they are right now, there's absolutely something here with this team. And I'm not even going to give into the cliche of, once you get in, anything can happen. No, I think they've proven that, they might have some matchup issues if they draw Buffalo. And I know, Tampa and Carolina would be tough too, because those teams are talented. But this team has shown that they compete more than they don't. And if anything, it's not lack of talent. Sometimes I just think it can be lack of discipline. I think they're putting teams on the power play more than a lot of other teams this year has not been great for them. I think times of getting away from their fundamentals and being lost in their own zone, inability to get out of their own zone, inability to set up on offense. It's something that a lot of teams struggle with. It's just that it can be a little more glaring when you don't have guys like God, the star power that you're used to. It's like, oh, it's fine because we're going to Patrice Bergeron and Zdeno Chara are going to bail us out and save the day. Tim Thomas is going to stand on his head and we're all going to get drunk on Causeway Street. No, those days are long gone. And I'm happy for that. I'm happy that there's change. I'm happy that this franchise is finally moving on from those days and looking to build something new for the fans to get invested in.
I feel like again, I'm not knocking any Boston fans' dedication, but I feel like if you look at the Boston Bruins and teams as a whole in Boston, and they're only worth your time if they're winning a championship, congrats. You're Florida fans now. You're Florida Panthers fans who only show up in June. You don't want to be that. Like, you are a sports town. Embrace the ride. Embrace the journey. Wrapping things up today, we have Mike in Natick. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for the show. You guys are the best.
Thank you.
I think we need to make the regular season much more important. So I think games, like you mentioned earlier, like you go to overtime and it's a 2.1 point. I think every game should be worth 3 points. If you win in regulation, you get all 3. If it goes to overtime, you win, then you get the point. If you lose, then you get the 1 point. I think that would make the regular season a lot more important. And then going forward with that, the playoff format, 1 through 8, you reseed every round. Once again, make the regular season count.
Yeah. No, Mike, thank you for the call. It's a great point. The feeling you have is shared by Steven Stamkos. Steven Stamkos wants the regular season to matter.
You have 82. It's either 82 and they need to matter, or we need fewer games.
Yeah, you're kind of
we'll never get.
You're cannibalizing your own league and its meaning, right? Like if you're Minnesota and Dallas and you know that you're locked into a first round matchup, why do you care between now and 82? Why should your fans pay face value between now and 82 to go watch your team? Like that's part of the equation here that I don't think is being respected enough. And I mean, think about this, man. All 3 teams that are currently in the Pacific bracket have losing records if you factor in overtime losses. All 3 of them. You're better off being the 5th best team in the conference than the 2nd best team in the conference based on this format. It is a dumb format.
As long as you don't mind the travel, then yeah, you can seed in anywhere and be fine with it.
I also hate, like, and this was cited as a big reason for why they made this format change back in 2013, 14, whenever it was, 14, 15. Yeah, 13, 14 is when they did it. They said, well, the travel. Are they taking buses? Are they taking trains? Are they catching the Peter Pan? No, they're on a flight. They're in a 5-star hotel.
The Bruins covered wagon, hopping on 95.
My God, it's not Eddie Shore, going from blizzard to blizzard in trains from Boston to Montreal. I got to get off of Montpelier and get on the train from there to Montreal. Like, no, they're all traveling in basically houses in the sky. I hate the travel part of it. Nevertheless, James Hagen's watch is official. Garvin, what are you thinking between now and when does he make his debut?
I am going to say, I know a lot of people are saying Tuesday. I'll say they play that Wednesday after, right?
In Buffalo, though.
Buffalo?
Yeah. I think they want him at home. That's my weird take, but you're running out of home games to make that happen.
Yeah, no, Toronto feels really soon. So maybe the next home game after that. Buffalo, that would be a tough landing spot. I'd like to see it, but I don't think I'll get what
I'm going to say Saturday at home against Minnesota. Quinn Hughes, American hero. Matt Boldy, American hero. James Hagens, future American hero, baby. All right, this has been the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. I am Ty Anderson for Ryan Garvin. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Full crew, I think, next week, by the way, too. Hope we got that. We'll talk to you then. Take care.
Boston's home for sports. 98.5 The Sports